This is not a very good film. It's not a film that one will remember throughout his life. It's not a film that changed the history of filmmaking. It's a decent film. Some people enjoy watching it, but I chose it for a very specific reason. I chose it because in the bigger part of the film, there is no subplot, there is no secondary plot, there are no secondary characters. There is just one man alone on an island. Actually, this goes on for 70 minutes. One man alone on an island. And this allows me to talk about how sequences are constructed in this film without any distraction by subplot, parallel action, secondary characters. That's why I chose the film. And of course, I'm going to show some part of it. When I made this decision that I wouldn't show the film and I would only show some parts, I thought, well, it's even better because I have to narrate the film so everybody understands. And actually, I have to present the project, do a pitching of a story, right? And this will allow us to discuss how stories are constructed, how story is constructed, how parts of the story are constructed, the three big parts of the story, like beginning, middle, end. Then go to the smaller bricks, like sequences, see how they are constructed, and then, hopefully, if it's not 10, we can talk about a scene or two from one of these sequences, and let's see how scenes are constructed, because I hope that, well, this is the point I will try to make. The story, the three parts, the sequences, and the scenes are constructed in the same logic. This is the logic we narrate. Logic of narration. Logic we narrate. No. The logic of narration. Okay, the film is Castaway. Probably some of you have seen it. Robert Zemeckis directed it. William Burroughs Jr. wrote the screenplay. How many have you seen this film? Seen? Sometime.
All of it.
Yeah. I have to see it for the fourth or fifth time. Anyway. So, can anybody tell us the story of this film? Would anybody want to do it? What is the story of this film? I thought so. I'll try. A FedEx manager, obsessed with time, with speed, can't really have Christmas dinner with his family and girlfriend because his beeper goes off and duty calls. So, promises to be back by New Year's Eve and boards a plane, a FedEx plane. The plane crashes in the middle of the ocean. He somehow survives and eventually finds himself on a deserted island. He survives there for almost 4 years, a bit more. It's really hard in the beginning, but eventually he finds a way out. He builds a raft, and then he ends up drifting in the Pacific until he is found half dead. He gets back, and he gets back to face civilization once again. He gets back to meet his girlfriend, who is happily married by now. In the end, they can't be together. Before he starts his new life, he has one last package, FedEx package to deliver. And that's the ending of the film. Did I forget anything?
The ball.
Oh, come on. No, yeah, but I didn't forget. I mean, did I forget anything from this? Anything big from the story? So this could be a presentation on the first day on the island of Nissyros, on the first day of script to film. Would it be an interesting project?
No.
Okay, probably not the best. We have better projects here. But would this presentation make sense? Yeah. There's a story. Can anybody, you have seen the film, most of you, can anybody spot the parts of this story? I mean, beginning, middle, and end of this story.
That's very clear.
Sorry? They are clear.
They are very clear.
Yeah. What is middle?
Yeah.
The island. Good. And the ocean. The island and the ocean. But just to give you an idea of how crystal clear these three parts are in this story. In the first part, which is the beginning of the film, first act, or whatever people call it, he is among people. In the second part of the story, he's all alone. In the third part of the story, he goes back to other people. So the island and the ocean is the second part of the film, the middle, and this is the part where he's all alone. So it's so easy, even from this 8 lines, 10 lines presentation, to spot the parts of the story. I will try to convince you that these three big parts of this story can be easily divided into 8 smaller parts, which I call sequences. 8 almost equivalent one to the other. Actually, they are 9, but this is a footnote. We'll talk about it later. Why there's a 9th sequence of this film. Usually, they are 8. So, hopefully you can figure that there are 2 sequences in the first part, 2 sequences in the beginning, 4 sequences in the second part, and another 2 in the third, in the end. Not only that, but the second part, which is the middle of the film, can also be divided into big parts. 2 sequences, beginning of second act, first part of second act, 2 more sequences, second part of the second act. Not only I will try to convince you that they are 8, but I will try to show you that each one of them does a specific job, narratively speaking. Pushes the story forward, putting a brick over another brick. In order to make it a little bit more fun, than the film, I tried to give a name to each of those 9 sequences. And in order for you to participate, I chose 9 titles of well-known songs. So each sequence has its own title. And then I will ask your help to find the job that the sequence is doing by giving the right title to each sequence. Is it okay? Good. So, first sequence of the film. We see a crossroads, middle of nowhere, a FedEx truck approaches and goes to Dick and Bettina's place. The truck goes in and a box, a package is given to the truck driver. We will identify this package because there is a pair of wings printed on it, a pair of golden wings. Cut. FedEx in Moscow. There's a man there. A man, the first thing we see is a clock ticking electronically, a clock counting down. And there's a man who seemingly lives by the clock, who teaches the new employees, the Russian employees of FedEx, how they should be speedy and precise. He teaches them, they have a minor crisis, a truck is stopped in the Kremlin Square and they have to unload and reload the packages, but it's taken care of. And so our guy, the FedEx manager, gets on a FedEx plane to go back home. He has a talk with a colleague of his, and we get to know that the colleague's wife has cancer. At the arrival, he offers his colleague to help him deal with the health problem of his wife. Then he gets to meet, the first thing he does on arrival is he gets to meet his fiancée. And it's a rather nice scene because his fiancée is making copies of her dissertation. She's over a Xerox machine and they meet and they end up dancing to the tempo of the copy machine. They end up, same night, sleeping on the couch in front of TV. There is Santa Claus news on the TV. Then a big family Christmas dinner. They talk about future marriage between FedEx manager and the fiancée. He has a toothache. He bites something. He has a toothache. At the same time, his pager is vibrating. We can see frustration on his face. He has to go to work. So, they are checking their schedules for the next days, and they ask themselves whether they will be together on New Year's Eve. They exchange Christmas gifts at the airport. She gives him her grandpa's clock, and he gives her a wedding ring in a box, not to be opened until New Year's Eve. Before he gets on the plane, he says, "I'll be right back." This is the first sequence of the film. In theory, we call it pure setup. Nothing else happens. The story hasn't started yet. Who is our hero? What is he made of? Pure setup. That's the job the sequence has to do. So you have to help me find a song that...
Last Christmas.
What?
Last Christmas.
Is this the job the sequence is doing? No.
We've only just begun.
What?
We've only just begun.
Huey Lewis and the Back on Time.
I'll be back on time. Is that the song?
Huey
It's a
Lewis.
promise.
Jerry Lewis? I'll be back.
Huey Lewis.
Huey Lewis? Who's Huey Lewis?
Lewis.
You are so old. I don't know this song. Okay, I chose an all-time classic. Time is on my side. Because in this point of the film, he's running all the time. He's pushing the Russian workers. He rushes back on the plane to catch up with the Christmas dinner. He dances to the fiancée over the Xerox. They can't go to a club. Then they fall on the couch. Then they have dinner with family. But so far, he makes it. Then dinner, then schedules, then maybe New Year's Eve. I'll be right back. He believes time is on his side. Time is on my side. So, the second sequence of the film starts. There is a question raised. People call it point of attack, or narrative hook, or with many, many names, when he says, right at the end of the first sequence, I'll be right back. The answer in the end of the film will be, no. But there's a clear question there for us who have seen the film. Second sequence starts. He's on the airplane, the flight is bumpy, and at some point, the pilots tell him that there is deviation. They have gone away from their route. Then there's an explosion. Then they pitch. Then they hit the water. Somehow he makes it to a plastic raft, and the plastic raft pulls him out of the cut-in-two airplane, and he goes up on the surface of the water. He survives. An engine of the airplane explodes almost next to him. He survives. He realizes he's in the middle of a store, in the middle of an ocean. He's all alone on this yellow plastic raft. He falls asleep. His boat eventually hits on a rock. It deflates. It's an island. He wakes up on the island's shore, minute 28. He still has his pager. Useless. He still has Kelly's clock, minute 30. First thing he does, an all-American FedEx manager, he doesn't make love. He gathers FedEx boxes from the shore. They are scattered around. Shouts, hello? Doesn't get any answer. He pulls the plastic raft ashore. He seeks refuge. He shouts, hello? Anybody? Help? He writes help using his feet on the sandy beach of the island. The beach is fantastic, by the way. At dusk, he sits alone with his FedEx boxes and his clock. He hears strange noises all night long. And that's the end of Act 1, because the island and him being alone there has to be introduced. We are 34 minutes into the film, and this was the second sequence of the film, which does a new job. Yeah. That's what?
What about I Don't Survive?
Not yet. Help. We call this sequence, it is often called collision sequence. There's a problem, he needs to be right back, but there is conflict there, and then at the end of this conflict, we know he has to go into real trouble if he wants to go back at some point. And that's the end of Act 1. He's all alone on this island. We can smell that it's not going to be so easy. The second act begins. The third sequence of the film begins. Hell on the sand is wiped out by the sea. He collects more boxes. He still hears noises. Noises come from falling coconuts. He gathers the coconuts. He tries to open the coconuts. It's difficult. He ends up throwing the coconuts on the rock, but the coconuts resist. There's a rock splinter. He throws the coconut on the rock. There's a splinter from the rock. He uses the splinter in order to cut the coconut. Finally, after long effort, he manages to drink the coconut's milk. He starts exploring the island. He finds a cave. He cuts his foot on a rock. He realizes he is completely isolated. He finds one more box. He makes shoes, cutting his trousers with the rock splinter. He climbs on top of the rock. He's all alone, but from up there, he sees something. He rushes down. It's the body of one of the pilots. He carries it out from the sea. He takes the shoes of the dead pilot off, but they are small. He finds a flashlight. He finds a photo of the kids of the pilot, the dead pilot. He buries the pilot. Then he puts his kid's photo in the pilot's pocket. He writes his name on the rock above the grave. He wears the pilot's shoes after cutting off the front part. He plays with the flashlight at night, looking at the photo of the fiancée, Kelly. It's in the closet. He takes a sheet, covers it up like a dog, searches for water, and desperately tries to catch some fish. It's night. He goes to the toilet, which means at the shore, pisses in the sea. And while he pisses, he sees a distant light. He rushes back, takes the flashlight, and tries to signal SOS. There's no response. The light goes, and then he gets on his plastic raft. He has taken care of the raft now. It's, half of it, it's working. Gets on the plastic raft and tries to leave the island, going for the light he saw last night. But the tide, the waves coming over the reef, they don't let him. A huge wave comes and turns him over. As he's turned over, a rock cuts his thigh really bad. I'll go on up to the middle of the film. He gets back. It rains. He covers the boxes with a plastic raft. He seeks refuge in the cave he found earlier. He sees water dripping from the top of the rock. He drinks. He's so tired, he leaves the flashlight on and falls asleep. The flashlight goes dead. Then, daylight comes from a little hole on the top of the rock. He checks his wound. It's getting worse. He starts opening boxes, FedEx boxes, packages. The first thing he finds is videotapes. Then he finds divorce papers. Then he finds a volleyball that a grandpa is sending to his grandson for his birthday. Then he finds ice skating shoes, the ones with the blades. And last but not least, he finds a woman's nightgown, night dress. Cut. He uses the blades of the skating shoes as knives. He makes bandage, first thing he makes bandage for his wound. He cuts coconuts easily. He fishes with the veil from the night dress. He eats raw fish, sushi. He sharpens the edge of a stick and nails a crab. He tries to make fire. His hand is bleeding out of the effort. He shouts in despair, in pain. He washes off blood from his hands and paints, using his blood as color, he paints a face, a red face on the white volleyball. Tries once more to make fire. He calls the ball Mr. Wilson. Wilson is the ball, the brand of the ball. He tries once more to make fire. Mr. Wilson is watching. He starts talking to Mr. Wilson the ball. He almost succeeds in making fire. He tries harder and finally makes it. A huge fire on the shore. He sings, "Come on baby, light my fire." He has crab on the grill. His tooth aches. Remember the tooth? Good. Back in the cave where he sleeps, he figures out why they didn't find him during search for the crash. He calculates the airplane course and the search area, and he tells us, talking to Mr. Wilson the ball, that the search area was 5 times Texas, which means really big. He uses ice skating blade as a mirror to take a look at his tooth. Then his tooth is aching badly. He tries to forget about it, painting his fiancée, Kelly, on the rock. He takes the blade of the ice skate, he hits it with the rock and takes the rotten tooth out himself. He faints because of the excruciating pain. And that's the middle of the film, because right after that we have a super saying 4 years later. Right? Can you tell me, can you tell where the 2 sequences, where sequence number 3 stops and where sequence number 4 starts? Yeah.
I think it stops. Sequence number 3 stops when he takes the yellow
Raft?
and he cannot leave the island.
Yes. Sequence number 3 ends by the failure of his try to leave the island. The tide brings him back, he's turned over, he injures his leg, he comes back. And then sequence number 4 starts. Do you have a title for these 2 sequences? Number 3, number 4. What was the major thing that happened in sequence number 3? What was the job of the sequence?
I'm not sure, but for sequence number 3, Pink Floyd is there and out there.
Good. Nice. Do you agree?
There must be.
Is there anybody out there? Are you lonesome tonight? Right? But for you, my choice was, to be honest, my choice was a Bob Dylan song, but nobody knows it, so then Desolation Row, then I named it Are You Lonesome Tonight? Is there anybody out there? It's even better. That's what the sequence is doing. And there's nobody out there. And this is vividly portrayed by the fact that he finds the dead pilot. And this dead pilot is a warning of what could happen, what could easily happen to him too. And then, sequence number 4,
I will survive.
I will survive. Good. Middle of the film, we get a super, it says, 4 years later. We see the sea, there's a fish swimming, yeah, and then there is a stick that falls into the water and hits the fish right on target. And then camera goes up and we get to see him. Now he looks like Brad Pitt because he's thinner, his belly is like that, he has a very long blonde beard and long hair. 4 years later. He sleeps in the cave. He has mapped out the seasons on the wall of the cave using the light that comes from the hole on the top. You know? And there are spots on the rocks, and so he has mapped out seasons. He has a calendar. As he's there, he hears some clattering from outside, and in the beginning, he's really frightened. He goes out really carefully, he hears more clattering, and then he realizes what it is. It is a piece of a plastic toilet box, you know, made in USA. Actually, it's from the place he comes from. That has a light. People throw strange things in the ocean. Plastic toilet, and 2 walls of this plastic toilet box. Cut. He has put these 2 walls standing on the sand. He has fixed it, standing up, and he stares there and looks at it for a few seconds. The plastic toilet falls because of the wind, and that gives him an idea. He sets off to make a raft, a real one. He calculates his need for rope. How much rope will he need? He calculates the best time for the attempt. He doesn't have much time until April. He starts building the raft. There is not enough rope. He uses videotapes to make rope. He goes back on the big cliff. We've seen him looking down all around the island because there is 30 feet of rope there. We get to see that this rope is hanging from a dead tree, and at the other side of these 30 feet of rope, there is a log hanging. A wooden body. He talks about his suicide attempt 1 year ago. He talks to Mr. Wilson. He says to Mr. Wilson, we might make it. I'll give it a try, instead of talking to a volleyball. He throws Wilson out of the cave. He regrets it. He goes out looking for him. He finds him and paints his face again with his blood. The raft is ready to sail now. It's made of wood, right? Of trees tied together. He says goodbye to the cave. He takes the one and only box that he hasn't opened. Guess what? Which? The one with the golden wings. Dick and Tatinas. Remember? This one is the box that he hasn't opened. He takes the last box with him. He paints wings on the walls of the plastic toilet as he waits for the wind to shift. He talks to Wilson. He says, are you scared? Me too. And that's the end of the 5th sequence of the film. What is the job that the sequence does? There's a good one. It's an old animals, so on. We've got to get out of this place.
There must be some way out of here.
There must be some way out of here, yeah. Same. But it's called
All along
the
the
joke
watchtower.
all along the watchtower. We got to get out of this place. Sequence number 6 starts. The light coming in from the top of the cave points, it is April now. So the wind will change any moment. He takes the raft and throws it in the water. He starts paddling like crazy. At the right moment, he releases the plastic toilet. What? The wind pushes it. He has made the sail using the plastic toilet walls. We see the golden wings painted on the walls of the toilet. And thanks to these wings, the plastic toilet, he makes it over the reef and gets away from the island. He heads for the open sea, leaving the island behind him. There is rain. He collects water. He paddles. A whale passes by and actually looks at him. He catches fish. He covers under the wings, under the plastic toilet during the storm. He loses his wings because of the storm. The plastic toilet goes with him. It will end up in some other island. His raft starts falling apart little by little. At some point, Wilson falls off the raft. A whale wakes him up from hands. He sees that Wilson is fading away. He desperately tries to get Wilson back, but he cannot leave the raft, so he holds the raft from a rope and swims and tries to catch Wilson. He loses his rope. Wilson is drifting away. He shouts in despair, "I'm sorry, I can't make it." He loses his friend. He's alone on his raft again. He's crying for his loss. He throws away his paddles in despair. The whale comes back again, a very persistent whale. We have a love story here. The whale comes back again, but he doesn't care. He's wasted, he's crushed. He's so crushed, he wouldn't lift his head up. He's lying on the raft, and if you remember, it's a spectacular shot because the camera is really close to him, he's wasted, and there is this sound we get to hear, and behind him, a huge, huge ship passes by. And then the frame opens and we see it's a cargo ship, and somebody has seen him because they blow their horn. And that's when he turns around and says, whispers, "Kelly." It's the girl, Kelly. And that's the end of the 6th sequence of the film. And the end of Act 2. So what is the job? Nobody?
I will always love you.
No.
I'm a survivor.
Honestly,
I'm a survivor.
we have I Will Survive. Look. The Doors? Anybody?
Sea of Love.
No. No.
Rise of the Storm.
Because of the whale? No, it was a joke. There's no love there.
The end. Riders on the Star.
Break on through to the other side, the DJ. Thank God. Break on through. To the other side. Because he has to pass over the reef, to the other side, and the other side may be his end, because it's the huge Pacific Ocean. So the ship gets him, and we are at the end of Act 2. Act 3 begins. 7th sequence of the film. Usually it's called preparation for the final battle. 4 weeks later, Kelly answers the phone at home. We don't get to hear what she hears, but she faints. We see him, he's on a FedEx plane again. He is shaved, he wears a suit, and his colleague informs him on the ceremony. There is a ceremony for his return. Kelly will be there waiting, but the colleague says, Kelly had to let you go, like he did with Wilson, if you remember. Kelly had to let you go. We buried you. He learns that his colleague's wife has died. Then we get to see the ceremony. It's on the airport, the FedEx plane on the back, American flag, of course, crowd, big crowd, and he's inside the airport. He's nowhere near the ceremony, probably waiting for Kelly. But instead of Kelly, the door opens and Kelly's husband appears. He is good looking. He says, Kelly is sort of lost. Give her some time before you get to meet her. He sees Kelly through the window, going away with her husband. She cries, she's desperate, but she goes away. There's a party at his hotel room. The party is over for his return. People are going away. He is all alone. He's left all alone with all the food. Raw fish, sushi, crabs, a lighter. He turns the light on and off, looking at Kelly's picture on the clock, like he did in his cave. And that's the end of the 7th sequence of the film. Do we have a title?
No woman will cry.
No one
No woman
will.
will cry.
No woman, no cry. Come. All by myself.
Lonely.
No, the song
Back from the
remains,
dead.
the song remains the same.
Dick Lazarus Dick.
Life is a beach.
Ariel is the end of the modern novel.
Come on, get back. Get back. Get back. Get back, Joe.
Not bad, he was the start.
Eighth sequence of the film, climax or final battle. A taxi arrives at Kelly's house. 10 minutes, he tells the taxi driver. It would be nice if he said, I'll be right back, but Kelly is waiting. She opens the door. She has a daughter. There are family pictures on the fridge. They talk about football. They talk about milk, low fat, full fat, etc. She has left her career. He gives her back her grandpa's clock. They talk about the crash and about the church. I shouldn't have gotten on this plane, he says.
No.
I should have known better.
They go to the garage. She has kept his car. Another product placement. It's a Cherokee Jeep. He gives him the keys, takes her things out. What now? You said you'd be right back, she says. Sorry, he says. Do you believe men?
No.
They kiss. He gets on the car and leaves. Kelly runs after it. Did I tell you? It's raining. Kelly runs after it. He gets out. They get both soaked. They kiss in the rain. They don't dance. I knew you were alive. I love you, she says. Me too, he says. They kiss. No, no.
Romance never has. But it's a wet kiss.
He takes her by the hand and he escorts her into his car. Then he gets in. They look at each other. You have to go home, he says. So he drives her back to her house with his car. Sequence number 8, and actually ending of the film, right? We only need a resolution here. Nothing more. The film has ended. Sequence number 8.
You can't always get what you want.
No, wait.
Nothing compares to you.
But they separate.
Yeah, but they love each other.
Don't let me down. Yeah,
Promises.
Don't let me
promises. What is this? Well, the film isn't over yet. Can you tell why?
He has to deliver the
It's
box.
not a happy end.
Yeah, but he could deliver the box and get away with it. You know, it would be a 30 seconds, 45 seconds resolution, and the film would be over. We would go home. But no. There is how much more? There's 10 more minutes.
He goes back on the island.
No. The film is not over because it can't end in this horrible moment that this all-American FedEx manager and this all-American blonde girl separate. No. He can't be alone after all this adventure, right?
FedEx always delivers.
Yeah, problem. So, there's another little sequence here, a long resolution. He's in his colleague's house. He talks about his suicide attempt on the island and how he failed. I knew I had to stay alive, he says, and keep breathing. The tide gave me a sail. I have to keep breathing. Who knows what the tide might bring? He's a philosopher.
It's very funny.
We get to hear an Elvis song, Mr. Postman, return to sender, address unknown. He goes in his Cherokee Jeep to deliver his last box because FedEx always delivers. The one, it's the box with the wings. He arrives at this ranch, there is the metal arc, but Dick is cut off. There is no Dick in this ranch, only Bettina. He goes in, he knocks, there is nobody home. So he leaves the box by the door with a note, something like this box saved my life. And then he goes away and he stops at the crossroad we saw in the beginning of the film. And there is this truck coming to this pickup truck, and it stops, and it's a red-haired, blue-eyed girl with jeans. She comes down, she says, "Are you lost, cowboy?" Bettina shows him the way. He tells him something nice. This way you go all the way to the west coast, this way to the east, this way to Florida, and this way to Canada. So, and she leaves, wishes him good luck. And then he looks to Florida, to the west coast, to the east coast, to Canada, and we know that when he looks towards Canada, he looks towards Bettina's ranch. And that's how the film ends. So there's a promise.
This time he will not.
He will not be alone. Now he doesn't live by the clock like in the beginning. So there's a chance for him and Bettina maybe. And this 9th long resolution sequence, I named it, although I shouldn't, because it shouldn't be another sequence. There should be 8 sequences in the film. But I named it because I think the title of the song is revealing for screenwriters. What is the job it does? Say it again.
You can
You can't always get what you want by the Rolling Stones. The song goes on, there's a parenthesis of the title, you can't always get what you want. But sometimes, if you try, you might find you get what you need. And it's usually, many times, it's what happens in the end of the film. The hero sets in this long adventure after something he wants, only it's not what he needs. In the end, sometimes he doesn't get what he wants, but he gets what he needs. There is this fantastic quote by this Western philosopher, Jagger, portrays the two lines of conflict into film. External conflict, the hero goes after his want. Internal conflict, the hero comes to realize what he needs. He needs to live a life without being, squeezed by the clock. But he won't kill it for some reason. 8 sequences. Forget the 9th, only for educational reasons. There are 8 sequences in the film. We can easily spot in most films the 2 sequences in the first act. Many, many times we can as easily spot the 2 sequences in the third act. Pure setup, collision sequence, then the hero gets into his adventure. Third act, preparation for the final battle, and final battle, climax, whatever you may call it. So we can easily spot them. But look at this. There are 4 sequences in the second part, in the bigger part of the film, the middle, in the most important part of the film. And these sequences this part is divided into 2 bigger parts. Sequences 3 and 4 do one job, sequences 5 and 6 together do another job. Actually, these sequences, they work together. They work in the same direction. I'll give you an example of what I mean. Here, is there anybody out there and will survive? Actually work together in the part of the middle where things are bad for the hero. On the other hand, sequences 5 and 6, we've got to get out of this place and break them through to the other side, work together for the part of the second act in which things are better, almost good for the hero when he breaks away, right? And it happens this way in a film like Castaway, because it doesn't have a happy ending. Aristotle was the one who said that the episodes, the elements of myth should follow each other in a relation of cause and effect. And he said they should follow each other in a relation of cause and effect, but against our expectation. So you see, the second act starts and things are going bad for him. And then, in the second part of the second act, something happens, he survives, taking his tooth out, and things are starting to go better and better and better, almost really good. Why? Because he's gonna lose in the end. And this way, he who narrates, William Joyce Jr. in this case, plays with our expectation. He makes us believe that things will go bad, but then he gives us hope for this guy, because in the end he will lose what he wants. He will not get what he wants. Right? So, what we've done so far is we saw the big chunk, the story, its 3 parts, and these 3 parts divided into smaller ones, like first act 2 sequences, second act 2 parts and 4 sequences, third act 2 more sequences. Usually, theory helps us analyze our work after we've done it. We write a screenplay and we check. Is my first act working? When you write, you cannot think of these things, right? But this sequence division of a story might help you construct a story, because it happens so often that we are missing parts in our story. We know how it will end, we know some points on how to get there, but there are pieces missing. This could be a way to guide yourself into inventing material where at the places you don't have it, where you miss it. Because you can ask yourself to invent material, let's say, for a sequence with a title. Is there anybody out there? This is the way the story unfolds. There's this guy who has time on his side, but then he crashes with the plane, he needs help, looks around trying to figure out whether he's alone or not. He is alone, but he's determined to survive. He gets the plastic toilet, he makes up his mind to get out of this place. There's no point in staying there. He breaks on through to the other side. So you get to see the movement of the story. And sometimes we miss parts of our story, and a good way to start filling them is to give them a job to do. I like some titles, but anything could work. Only you have to be precise about the job your sequence needs to do, and you have to be direct. Sequences have beginning, middles, and ends. And if I went back, if that's a threat, if I went back to show you how he makes fire scene, I would not. You would see that this scene, making fire, has a beginning, a middle, conflict, and an end, climax, even a resolution, the grilled crab. Why? Well, this is how we narrate. Either we tell very long stories or smaller ones. I find sequences a very, very useful tool, especially when I'm missing parts in my story, when I don't know how to go from this to that. And sometimes it's not so easy, it's not so clear, because in our stories we do have subplots, we have secondary plots, we have parallel actions, we have secondary characters we need to take care of. But nevertheless, the same goes for these stories too. There are sequences doing a job. There are sequences pushing the story into a certain direction. And I hope that you will find it useful too, and you will start thinking about your big story, smaller parts of it, naming it, defining the job these smaller parts, these smaller stories need to do. That's all I have about it. It was crystal clear.